is the aims of it all, about drawing together, which is literally what we're doing now, driving activity and sharing best practice. So that's what we're going to be hearing a little bit more about through all of the different work streams who have, despite the challenges of the last 12 months, been racketing on ahead in their respective areas. So a couple of housekeeping points. You'll have the slides on here, but we're going to be recording this one as well. So if there's any trouble with that or you've got any issues, please put a mention in the chat box to myself or to Jim. And this presentation will be available on the South East LEP website within the next week or so. So if anyone's missed it and you're watching, welcome. Otherwise, right now you can pass it and share it on with other colleagues who might be interested in the digital skills situation. So just very briefly, from our point of view, from the small business community, you can imagine the last 12 months, as they have been for everybody, whether you're man, woman or child, in business, in residence, in a community charity setting, it's been an absolute major challenge. And just a few tiny points I wanted to draw out from SMEs in particular. As soon as lockdown hit a year ago now, good heavens, small businesses within their local community, literally their whole geographical world shrank, as you can imagine, physically. And actually, we know that from our studies, 57% of small businesses absolutely took up a community role there and then, all kinds of different ways. We've got a report on our website called New Horizons, which highlights all the different ways that small firms realised that there was work to be done and there were groups and people to support, and they absolutely stepped up to it. So 57% set up and acted in a community facility. 23% of that was helping in key workers, whether that was literally donating food from restaurants to the NHS. Remember when we were all out there clapping for them? Lots of restaurants were just giving away free food to support that workforce on the front line. A lot of people were providing PPEs and suddenly switching businesses. We heard of manufacturers who usually made curtains who were making face masks. People absolutely changed their way to help deal with this pandemic. But an interesting point, which actually is kind of doesn't quite tally, I feel, in the way that we've all started to operate in the last 12 months. Only 16% of these small firms developed a new or online digital presence. And you think about how actually you suddenly needed to get your food and you couldn't log on to Sainsbury's because it was rammed. You really needed that quick access to those businesses locally just to get your food supplies in, let alone to get any books or buy any puzzles. And actually one of those small business, I think they were down in Cornwall, who do sell puzzles, ended up working an 18-hour day as we all realised we were stuck in our homes running our businesses and needing some kind of entertainment. So I think that kind of sums up in a way the absolute need for this digital skills partnership, which draws together so many different groups because we have to improve our digital skills. We all have ramped up in the last 12 months. There is still so much more to be done. I'm going to hand over to my co-chair, who is, as you can see there, from Pfizer UK, to give a little perspective from Pfizer, and then we're going to break out and to hear from those working groups. Thanks.
So thanks, Alison. Can you hear me okay? Yeah, super. So, you know, as Alison was just mentioning, you know, there's been such a seismic shift in our working practices over the last year. And I think now, more than ever, the whole value and potential of the digital skills partnerships across the UK are really being realised and acknowledged. So what's been really good to see across our CLEP, you know, DSP has been the diversity in the organisations that we have, and also that willingness to flex, you know, to focus on what's been needed in the last few months, or last quite a few months, and the general enthusiasm and the goodwill actually from the whole group, who, you know, are very, very busy coping with all of these different demands, you know, that Alison just mentioned. And I guess we, you know, we are really proud to be part of this group, you know, of really busy but very talented individuals who've really coalesced around some impactful activities to ensure really the future productivity of our whole region, which, as we know, is not only large, but it's really complex and diverse in terms of the needs across individuals. You know, from a large corporate perspective, you know, the current pandemic has seen a seismic shift in how we work as well. It's seen a change in how we prioritise, what we focus on, how we value diversity and inclusion. You have to think about that very differently when everybody or a majority of people are online. It's had an increase or a change and an increase in focus on well-being, on family life, and the demands that we're all finding from working from home. And our understanding of all of that and our changes has all had to be via digital technologies, by virtual meetings and virtual working for a very large part. And even our scientific work in Pfizer has been, a lot of that has been delivered in group work online. It's not all been face to face, and that's from brainstorming ideas, working on new medicines, to how we recruit people. We've been bringing in a lot of new people, to how we transfer processes for making medicines to manufacturing sites around the world. So we've more than ever really got to focus on how we harness in the value of data, and how we can do that together with the great scientific minds that we've got to be able to continue driving, new breakthrough medicines to patients. And of course, everybody's got to focus on that right now. But, the enabler of all of that are the digital skills and the digital tools and technologies. And so that's really core to us, as well as many of you here today. So what's been really good to see, I'm sure Alison will agree, is really how you've all managed to focus and deliver, as I said a minute ago, through these really difficult times. But how we've been able to support so many people who really need skills to help them get out of financial difficulty, which of course we're all aware of, all the difficulties that people have been having, to help them prepare for the future. Lots of people having to change careers because of the changes they've been experiencing, or even needing digital skills because they need just simply to stay connected with family and friends and or healthcare professionals. Of course, everything has changed, the way we communicate, we shop, we do everything. So what you're doing really matters, and I'm looking forward to hearing today about where you've been focusing on and progressing more. And I think what we'll be looking for out of today and moving forward is really to try and draw out key metrics around the key things that we've been delivering in each of your work streams, so that people who come to visit the Digital Skills Partnership site can actually find out quickly and easily, where things are and how to access support. So, stepwise appreciation, I think, across citizens, no matter where you work, whether it's in small business or if you're unemployed or if you're in training and education or if you're working in large organisations, everybody realises, the increased need for digital skills. There's been a stepwise change, if you like, and it's been a huge step in the awareness and the need, and there's going to be a future, increased need, even when people go back to some sort of semblance of normality. So what you're doing really matters, and I guess a big thank you. And with that, I'll pass to Jim.
Thanks, Melissa, and thanks, Alison, both of you for all your work over the last year in a really tough, challenging time, as we don't again need to tell people. I'm going to just take people through a bit of a snapshot, if you like, of our work as a digital skills partnership over the last, well, I guess 18 months in existence. Just so we can outline, I'll be a bit of a reminder too about what the Digital Skills Partnership means, what it consists of, that kind of thing. But then, as I say, a bit of a snapshot of highlights over our period so far. But first, my boss, Louise Aiken, skills lead for the South East LEP, wasn't able to make it with us today. She's on leave, but she asked me to pass on a very brief skills update from the point of view of the South East LEP. And Louise is someone we work very closely with in the skills advisory panel too. But first thing to mention is that skills report. So the Department for Education required of the skills advisory panels, that part of the LEP that's focused around skills and is made up of our training providers, our businesses, and all people with an interest around skills. So we've had to produce a skills report. That's now ready to go. It's in final draft. I think it's gone through the accountability board for the CELEP, so it should be out shortly. The data, Louise took a deep look at whether the challenges we faced when we first came up with the skills strategy have changed, and I think it's fair to say they haven't changed in any shape or form. They've got worse in a number of cases, of course, but I'm sure that will be of interest to many organisations across the patch. So that will be out shortly. You may be aware of our skills and business support COVID relief funds. So we're currently in a period where the successful bidders have been notified. We're not allowed to mention as yet who they are, but in due course, in short order, we should be able to release information about who's won those tenders and what that will mean across the region in the business support and skills side of things. There's been an ESF call for tender out that's around pathways to jobs for young people, including digital support to those young people looking for work. So that's something that may be of interest to individuals that have attended today. And at the moment, again, you may be aware of a major projects group as part of CELEP that brings in people like Lower Thames Crossing, Public Health England, London Resort, Ebbsfleet Garden City, etc. So that group has come together, and we're currently doing a bit of a research piece, if you like, about their shared skills challenges, the needs of those major projects. And again, that will be out shortly. And finally, the Digital Skills Partnership, alongside the Skills Advisory Panel and many other members or stakeholders across the territory, are planning this Virtual Careers Festival on 15th of July. And again, we'll come out with further details of that shortly. That was a bit longer than I expected it to be. But I'm just going to move on now, as I say, to the DSP, just to go back a little bit to the background for those that might be on the call today that weren't perhaps aware. So we were part of a second tranche of LEPs that bid to the Department for Culture, Media and Support for support to establish a digital skills partnership in our region. Our bid went in late 2018. We were awarded the DSP status in 2019, and we launched in the middle of June of 2019 alongside Cornwall and Cheshire and Warrington, and West Yorkshire have most recently joined us. That support manifests itself very much in terms of my role as coordinator on behalf of the great and the good around this virtual table today, and also support from DCMS in terms of monthly briefings with them and our fellow coordinators from those other areas where we gain the insight, the connections to corporates and that kind of thing. In terms of who we are, you can see faces and names around the Zoom board at the moment, but this is a representation of who's connected in terms of leads and co-chairs for the partnership. Heard from Alison and Melissa. You will be hearing from the likes of Aj from STEM Learning, who leads alongside Murray for our education working group. Jane and Kit will talk to you in a bit around work around support. Will and George will talk about digital inclusion and the efforts they've been making in that respect. Olivia, on her own, currently is leading for the alignment between industry need and what's on offer from our education providers across the region. Dan has been connected to the Digital Skills Prospectus, and we're looking for additional support there too. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that prospectus a little bit later. And Melissa mentioned about this, it's no greater, I guess, but at the importance of this diversity and inclusion piece throughout all of those priorities. And Kit, as well as doing the SME and charity group and the work around that, has also kindly taken a lead on the diversity and inclusion piece. And increasingly our leads for those different priorities will be working alongside Kit in that respect. I then am the coordinator. My job is to basically do the donkey work for these people. So they'll feed me their needs. They'll feed me what's required in an admin sense. They'll tell me who they want to connect with. And that's my job, basically. So I'll be scurrying around in the background while these guys are doing the hard work. Just to talk about our connection, how we're connected upon. So Aj does everything, as I'm sure many of you will know that are viewing in today. But Aj takes up our position as the Skills Advisory Panel, the SAP member, and the DSP sort of cross connection, which is great. I also attend SAP and the Skills Working Group, our business hub. When the 3 growth hubs from across our region get together, I tend to go along and represent the Digital Skills Partnership too. And I report into DCMS on a monthly basis and to CELEP quite clearly from a skills front. So I hope that gives people that maybe are a little newer to the Digital Skills Partnership a bit of a picture of what we are, how we're made up. just to add, those priorities that we came upon were, it was an exercise of a survey quite early on in terms of the partnership, and conversations we had across the piece with people that knew this kind of digital skills world very well. So just to touch upon the highlights, the things that the people around this virtual table have been able to do in the relatively short time with a COVID pandemic in between too. Firstly, in terms of that response to COVID, I've mentioned the skills and the business support funds. It is a very important thing to say that what the likes of Melissa and Alison and Jane and Kit and Adj and Olivia have managed to do has been done without millions of pounds of money from DCMS. It's been a lot of goodwill, a lot of support from DCMS, me in the background trying to help make things happen. But what they've done is without money. What changes now in the next couple of weeks is that the DSP is at the heart of those skills and business support COVID relief funds. So we'll be playing a part in monitoring, supporting successful bidders to get the digital aspects done. So if you're not aware, digital aspects include access. There's a significant pot there about kit and connectivity and essential digital skills. There's a section there about digitising business. So clearly Jane and Kit will be at the heart of that too. And there's also a section, for example, around upskilling and retraining for digital roles. And again, many of our leads will be playing an important part in supporting winning bidders to that. Very early on in the pandemic, we got, as many other did, resource lists, links to support organisations up on the LEP website. We continue to update that too. We were very proud to have made a donation to the Good Things Foundation to help people in certain areas across our region with kit and connectivity and some learning support from the Good Things Foundation too. And actually, credit must go to Pfizer and to Discovery Park, who joined us in donating to Good Things to help make even more of that opportunity. We expedited the first iteration of the South East Digital Skills Prospectus. I'll touch upon that in a bit later, but I can't stress enough how important I think that is now and will be in the future. And again, we'll work on support from people around this table to help get us onto the next stage. We've partnered with the likes of Coursera, with Google Digital Garage and Digital Boost to have events happen across, I was going to say across the region, but virtually for people across the region. And other events too, which again, I'll touch on. Our digital platform, it's sort of again been expedited over the course of COVID, but we're delighted to have this space dedicated to skills across South East called southeastskills.org.uk. And there is information there for businesses, for individuals, for partner organisations around digital, including links to the likes of and Amazon Small Business Accelerator, those kind of useful resources and sources of support for businesses and individuals. But again, that digital skills prospectus exists there too under that courses banner that I've highlighted with a very poorly drawn circle. But that's an important part of the CELEP and the DSP channel now and partners. And I think that's one of the things we'd like to get across to people watching in today is that we now have this channel for you to share examples of the great stuff we know you're doing out and about, to make asks of people that might be viewing that platform, to add to our prospectus and that kind of thing, to give us blog information, to give us pictures and case studies. There's a channel now for that kind of thing too, thanks to the work of these guys around the table. We work with Coursera to offer free courses and qualifications to individuals that signed up by a certain time. And we got that done. We're very delighted with the numbers that signed up. Google Digital Garage events are happening now. They've happened in March for small businesses. In a bit later this year, probably May time onwards, there'll be more aimed at digital citizen kind of stuff. So keeping your family safe online, keeping individuals safe online, drawing up and improving your CV, that kind of stuff for individuals either looking for work or still struggling with the digital world as they are at home. We've run Stay Visible, Stay Viable, Stay Profitable events for SMEs and charities that saw 100 plus attendees. I had a specific event for charities about their digital strategies. Adj, in another hat, or his main job, I guess, his STEM learning hat, delivered a Shifting the Balance event for teachers very recently that saw a good number of teaching staff turn up to have some really exciting agenda items on there. So we're delighted to be supporting that event too. And then a Facebook digital skills session is another example with the Braintree District Council of something the partnership helped make happen. And then we've been out there, we've shared the message about the DSP. We've delivered a number of events, as I say, including the joint SAP and DSP conference in October last year that saw 230 plus attend. New people connecting to the LEP, which have been really appreciated by the LEP. A variety of people now engaging with the LEP that perhaps wouldn't have done were it not for some of the things we've seen thanks to partners involved, and things like the National Friendship connections we've made. So Microsoft to the CEC network in East Sussex, Microsoft to the prison network, and NHS CCGs in East Sussex to the East Sussex College Group. So all those things have happened without any money that I've been able to dish out to the likes of Adge and to Kit and to Jane and to others. But it's goodwill, it's people giving up of their time, people working with partners in working groups where they've coordinated that kind of thing. And I think as a digital skills partnership and as partners, whoever those partners might be, including many people that are watching in today, I just wanted to say a thank you and to welcome that support from here onwards. Just to add to that, and I promise this is the last bit, Alison and Melissa, I suppose from my point of view, and Leeds will talk about their objectives and their plans for next year and what they might be looking to partners for support. I suppose from me as a coordinator, what I want the DSP to increasingly be is that means and that channel for shining a light on the excellent things happening across the region, independent of the digital skills partnership. But we want to help showcase the good stuff happening. If people are looking for introductions, connections across the region to investigate expanding their focus or looking at developing a specific approach in an area such as ours, then we can help connect. We can help have discussions in our working groups to help organisations with an interest in doing that. And as I say, continued support to our leads in the next 12 months against their respective priorities. The specific thing I'm after is an app developer who might help myself and Dan join with us in leading that work around the prospectus to get it to iteration 2. But perhaps if you're listening in now and that might have pricked your ears, I'm going to do a little bit of a show off of the prospectus as we have it once our other leads have spoken about their area. So I think I'm done there. Apologies for taking so much time, but I'll hand back now to Alison and Melissa. Thank you.
Thanks, Jim. It's all about connectivity. Your sound was about 90% okay, but I think we got the message, which already is showing that there has been such a lot done. When you cram it onto a couple of slides like that, there is that sense of a ball rolling and start that snowball effect. So as Jim says, it's very much a partnership. It's about making these connections that might not otherwise be there. So shall we move straight on to Adge, who's going to talk to us about the Digital Skills Partnership and his work in the world of education within STEM, but also the world of education in a wider sense.
Thanks very much, Alison. And thanks, Jim, for the intro earlier on. I'm just going to try and share my screen. This is where it all goes horribly wrong. And hopefully not. Somebody can just tell me that they can see that, okay?
We can see that, Adge.
Wow, that's great. That's good news. So yeah, good afternoon to you all. And thanks for allowing me, Jim, to say a few words from the working group here on the support to students 5 to 19 with digital skills that they require for the world of work. We changed that title from Jim because it was kind of boring, the last one. And I think that's less boring, but more words. For me, Alison, Melissa, there are 3 C's for me at the moment. Collaboration, cohesion, and coherence, and everything that we're trying to do in digital skills has been very much about that. I firstly need to thank my co-chair, who's unfortunately unwell today, Murray, and can't join us, and also to the working group, who are probably chewing at the bit a little bit because we met before Christmas, then we had the ridiculous lockdown in January, and I've been very eager to get the working group back together again quite soon, to actually celebrate some of the great stuff that's already going on from where they've kicked off. So I'm just going to kick off really and just kind of give you a reminder, essentially, from the terms of reference for our particular working group of where our real focus, our foci is around, obviously increasing the digital capability needed by students. Come back onto students a bit later on. Clearly, this whole idea of coherence, cohesion, and collaboration, engaging stakeholders in industry to share the current practices that are going on, and actually to kind of not just share practice, but actually to amplify it. And I think that's a really big word, because I think there's some great practice that's going on in pockets. And I think part of the digital skills partnership and everything we're trying to do, and Jim leading on it, is very much about trying to amplify good practice as well. Increasing students' exposure and around that 5 to 19 agenda to the understanding of the real world of careers around digital skills. Actually, I'm going to be, I think maybe a bit controversial, but I'm going to say it anyway. I think digital skills is a universal skill. I think it's a skill that actually any sector and any job requires going forward. And although we talk about areas like gaming, and we think about areas of data science, for example, I actually think that the skill of digital skills is required by our kind of new generation as they come through their schooling. So it's a universal skill. Part of our terms of reference was also looking around improving the confidence and knowledge of our teachers. Our educators are really key to this, in this pipeline of trying to get young people enthused, motivated, and excited to stay in a world of technology, computing, and digital skills. It starts from our agents of change, and our agents of change has to be teachers. And I think it's clear to see from both the CELEP and the Southeast LEP, of course, and the DSP, that actually teachers form a fundamental jigsaw piece here in our puzzle of trying to really deliver a world-class digital skills agenda for the Southeast. Obviously, we're trying to liaise with a number of the working groups as they go on, and of course consider proposals for action. In terms of when we first met in our first working group, for those who were there, and there will be one or two of our working group members on today, we really focused down on a number of key areas to work on. The first set of areas, like the industry relevant CPD programs to support teachers, educators, to really raise the game a little bit. We make too many assumptions, I think, that teachers know the world of digital skills out there and the career opportunities out there for them. So it's really important in technology computing that we actually support our teachers going forward. And that was a really fundamental aim that seemed to come across in the working group. Obviously, strengthening industry and education links per se. I come from industry previously. I value, with my STEM learning hat on, the importance that we put on ensuring that people see the real world of work. And I think it's really important that as part of this digital skills world, we show to young people and to teachers and others, the great opportunities that are open to them in terms of career opportunities per se. A national flagship program called the STEM Ambassadors Program is really key to government going forward. And actually, I know that CELEP and nationally, it's recognized that role models really change young people's minds about the opportunities open to them. So it's been a real drive for us to create a kind of cohort of increasing number of digital STEM ambassadors across the Southeast. And I'll come back onto that. You'll be surprised by some of the work that's gone on there so far. Work experience has been of real interest to a number of people in the education world, particularly further education colleges, those looking at T-levels, etc. So we need to box clever here. We need to be smart, I think, with the way we can help young people when what has been a very, very difficult time during the pandemic area. Obviously, funding. Jim, I will come back to you with money or requests for money at some stage. You know that, and obviously sharing practice. So, what in heaven's name have we done? Well, just last week on the 25th of March, we held a really major Shifting the Balance teacher conference. It was well attended with 160 registrations of teachers at any one time during a school day, by the way. We had over 94 teachers actually online at some stage. We had the most incredible speakers there. And I think, it's something I want to talk to Kit about offline at some stage. But the most incredible speakers from the BBC, from Raspberry Pi, and it really did come across to teachers, and it came across to those who are on the conference itself, that actually this is a really important agenda. How do we break the barriers down of thinking about girls and young women thinking about technology and computing and digital skills as a career path for them going forward? So this shifting the balance and closing the gender gap in computing education was key. And we did this in association with the National Centre for Computing Education Teaching Computing Hubs that we have in the Southeast. But I have to say my sincere thanks to the Digital Skills Partnership and the Southeast LEP for all the support to bring this coherence, this cohesion, this connectivity to everything we're trying to do on the ground. And I have to say at the bottom there, in May and June, I'm going to be following this up with a much more student-facing post-16 event, which is going to engage hopefully a number of our digital STEM ambassadors from industry directly to students in a more speed networking activity. But I'll just finish off just by saying that those digital STEM ambassadors were part of this story too on the shifting the balance. So during the day at successive times, we had 10, 12 STEM ambassadors, some from Google, Tata Consultancy, from other industries, from just unbelievably just engaging and networking with teachers in a really kind of social digi leaders platform. And it worked a treat because teachers were able to understand better what does it mean to be a digital person within industry, and they can convey that back into their school environment. So it was very powerful, but now I want to follow that up. So that's been a really positive experience. As part of our drive to engage young people, I'm working on an Interreg project very closely with the Hexa Transformation Healthcare team as part of our digital skills working group. And what's really fascinating here is this bridges the gap between digital skills and healthcare. I know it's a passion of Melissa's as well, about making sure that we really drive the importance of healthcare and digital skills opportunities. This is a major project across the whole of the South. And I put a little map down there showing all the schools that have so far taken place with this with this program. In fact, that 37 is now is over 40. And the really interesting thing is it's 100 schools in the Southeast, it's 100 or the southern part of England, and 100 schools in France in a European-wide project. And the exciting thing is schools really want to get engaged because they want their young people to understand digital skills opportunities and healthcare opportunities going forward. So it's a really exciting program of work, which will be kicking off in January 2022. But you can see already schools are excited by it. And last slide that I'd like to bring up, really, if I may, Jim, is that there's a lot of activity going on behind the scenes based on our first 2 working group meetings. And the first one of those is this virtual work experience. There are conversations afoot at the moment. We're talking to practice labs to look at piloting for free an opportunity to have a look at a virtual work experience platform. Really exciting. I'm hoping to take this forward a bit more in the next few months, but I'm looking actually to a couple of industry sectors and industry colleagues who might like to be part of that pilot. So please come back to me or come back to Jim if you have an interest. The second thing to say is that I've mentioned the STEM conference around post-16. I'm really eager to get, well, actually, I'm going to tell you now, I'm eager to get over 400 students at post-16 to be involved in this activity. I'm also looking to get over 100 STEM ambassadors to be involved in the speed networking sessions as well on a DigiLeaders platform. So this is no mean undertaking here. This is quite going to be a big agenda. And so anybody who has an interest in this, if we've got some teachers on board as well today, please come get back in touch with me. Pushing the Hexa Transformation Healthcare MedTech agenda in terms of digital skills and healthcare. So if you have an interest, please come back to me again. I'm looking to involve, and I'm thanks to Pfizer and AstraZeneca, to the BBC as well, who have all shown interest as industry to be part of this, to work with teams of kids to bridge the gap between healthcare and digital skills. So if you have an interest, come and find me. Murray and I are both working very closely with IDEA. So those who don't know IDEA, it's kind of a free opportunity to support those around digital enterprise and employability skills. It's about actually getting involved in badges and online modules. It's really quite exciting. It's free, and it's something that you might want to have a look at, and I'm happy to talk to anybody offline on that. And obviously, Jim mentioned earlier on the fact that we've now got a kind of place to put some of this activity on. I think it's really important we celebrate as well as kind of, you know, challenge ourselves about what we do going forward. So I hope that's given you a kind of snapshot at this moment in time of one of the working groups at the moment, and our ongoing discussions. And I'll finish with the fact that, you know, we are, I think, seen as quite a pillar for hopefully the Digital Skills Partnership Southeast team in helping students and educators really find their way in a digital world. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Aj. Follow that, as they say. You've obviously done and achieved so much in that time, and with all of the difficult lockdown restrictions. So absolutely hats off to you. It looks wonderful. There were some great comments about your Shifting the Balance event, actually. So I know that I mentioned at the beginning, we're about, we need to share best practice between all of these different organisations. It might be sometimes repeating best practice, not only sharing it, but look, you need to run that again. So if there's any way that you can share any information about any recordings of that, I think people will be grateful for that. But looks wonderful, and keep on what you're doing. We'll follow you with great interest. Fabulous.
Thanks, Alison.
Thank you. So now, having set the bar quite high, I know that actually I'm sure Jane and Kit are going to just follow it really brilliantly as well. So you're looking after the SME, the small and medium enterprise, and the charity work stream. So it would be great if we can hear from both of you. Thank you.
So I'll kick off. I'm going to be very annoyed at you, Aj, for setting that bar so high. I don't even have slides, but what I do have is just some context for change. So we've been running the Jane and I are working on the SME and charities working group, and we've had a refocus, if you like, of strategic kind of focus, which was all about engagement. How many organizations, how many employers, how many businesses can we engage with? Our previous strategic focus was somewhat narrow. Jane and I have now looked at how can we broaden that out and really think about the key areas that are a challenge for the SMEs and charities in this organization, in this region. And where we have decided to focus on are opportunities for moving into the emerging technology space, which is something which is of real importance to the region. How do we bring higher value jobs, higher value skills, and create opportunities for these organizations? And we decided to focus on automation there. Now, with my diversity hat on and Jane's literal diversity hat on, we have also wanted to make sure that we are providing some opportunities for education and engagement on the diversity and inclusion and anti-racism front. So we have a strand which will support organisations with that. And then also specifically looking at how we can connect that digital skills piece with some outreach work and some work that Jane's looking to do with from a gender perspective. So what we have done to start with, because we've restarting our strategy, if you like, we've decided for high impact engagement opportunities, and we're looking at creating 3 events between now and the end of the year, no pressure, Jane, where we will be focusing on opportunities for automation, anti-racism, and then gender balance and skills. So I'll talk about the first 2, and then Jane can jump in with her piece. So when we're talking about opportunities for automation, this is for a number of reasons. Now, when we've both been talking to SMEs and charities, particularly in this time where we are more reliant on technology than we've ever been, and we realise the benefits of automation technologies for taking organisations forward, we're trying to make sure that we can educate, create, and engage with organisations on how can they capitalise from the opportunities that are currently being created by automation. We've got one of the leading automation software vendors who are keen to partner with us to create an event where they can it will hopefully be one where they can create a forum for us to talk about opportunities for automation. How might that work? What skills does your business need in order to capitalize on this area of technology? And what are the quick wins? How can this have an impact on your business as we focus on recovery? And that's for us is a really important first step to bringing some of the SMEs and micro businesses that we really want to focus on, and charities who perhaps don't get the full exposure to large automation programs, and really give them that taster, and which hopefully they will then be able to embed into their own organizations. And then even though we have demographics in the region which may mean that anti-racism is not always a focus, we really want it to be, as part of the work that we do to support SMEs and charities as they develop. And so we're going to have an event which is focused on anti-racism. What does that look like in a region like ours? How do we do it, and how do we do it well, and what is it? And those are going to be 2 areas of focus where that we hope will give a little bit of a balance between the digital skills piece from a employee perspective, digital skills from a how do we upgrade as businesses, how do we transform ourselves digitally, and then also that diversity and inclusion piece around anti-racism, and how do we embed that into our businesses in the Southeast. And then I will hand over to Jane to talk about the third piece.
Thank you, Kit. And I think Kit's really, what Kit just said there around what is it, the feedback that me and Kit have had. So me and Kit, we catch up every Friday afternoon, probably about 3 hours before it's gin time. And we just sort of reflect on the week, and we look at, okay, what can we contribute to the group? And we've been doing this now, 5 or 6 weeks. And the research and the feedback that we've had from employers that we work with is there's certain things small businesses and charities some of them don't quite understand, so they don't know where to start. It's the you don't know what you don't know. So in terms of what is it, it was automation and digital skills is one thing that people just aren't quite sure, or they think it's going to cost them a huge amount of money, and they think it's suddenly going to put loads of people out of work. But in fact, what it will do, we know it can make businesses work so much more efficiently, which then lets them get on with the bits that the reason why they set the business up in the first place. So particularly with Kit's background, it's just a really good fit to do a workshop there. And the anti-racism, again, it's something that we talk about, but when you actually speak to people about, okay, how are you being proactive in this area? What are you doing? People don't always have a plan, or aren't being proactive enough around how they are showcasing what they're doing to encourage others to talk about that. And, actually day to day, your marketing, how you speak to people, where is that feeding through? So again, it was, what is it? How do we do that? So that's why we thought we'd approach that topic as well. And then a topic that's particularly close to my heart, mums and women, and supporting this demographic back to work. And again, I think where there has been a shift, we was talking about it earlier, wasn't we, around the pandemic and different ways of working. So there's lots of organisations that have had to furlough staff, or make people redundant, or even close down temporarily. And as we get some light at the end of the tunnel, these businesses are starting to evolve again, but they might not go back to their original workforce. So they might want to take on people flexibly, part-time, and that's where taking on a parent, they don't have to take on a parent, but taking on a mum or a woman returner could be a really good fit for business as they start up again. So that's why we felt the third workshop just fitted really nicely with the how do I do this, what is it? And they've all got such a digital theme running through them, particularly where the women returners that we work with will have all gone through the essential digital skills. So not only can we support these small businesses and charities with the automation and making their businesses efficient, the anti-racism to make them more inclusive and forward thinking and reaching out to the right people, but also to take on the right staff that have the digital skills in the first place. So I think our Friday late afternoon chats You know, we put the world to rights, and we think these 3 workshops will really support local businesses in terms of what is it, and we can answer those questions.
Thank you both. That sounds fantastic. And being in the small business world myself, that absolutely chimes and makes so much sense. They want engagement and they want to see you and hear what you're saying. So actually having those kind of face-to-face events are going to be fantastic. I'm sure of it.
Yeah, so.
And equally on the anti-racism front, that's really interesting. We've got a Black and minority-led business work stream within the FSB at the moment. And so many people join that saying, I'm not from a Black or minority ethnic background, but I want to be a better employer. And we're seeing quite a lot of trend in businesses moving towards that, saying, what is it that I actually need to do to open up my recruitment or to make sure my staff are better supported? So I think we're definitely seeing really positive movements in that direction. So your work stream here is absolutely going to really provide that information and knowledge for those people to be more diversive, get that thriving business going and support those people as they wish. Sounds fabulous.
Right, just to add, just before we go, or our part, is that 3 workshops are planned. We're looking at May, July and September. So we're just confirming the dates, and then we've so we started writing the content, and then we know that Jim and the team will help us support in terms of getting those numbers booked up. So yeah, really exciting workshops, webinars, and yeah, I look forward to it.
Thank you both so much. And I'm sure that we'll be able to put that kind of information on southeastskills.org.uk. And equally, if we can all sort of support and use the hashtag DSPSE, then we'll be able to kind of keep abreast of it and start to save the date once you've got those dates firmed up. Fantastic. Thank you both ever so much. We are moving on now to another working group. So this will be an interesting one, bearing in mind where we've been. A lot of us, we're sitting here comfortably, just about got network connection. We've got some snazzy headphones. Not everyone has this. And so actually, I think Will and George's work stream is so important. It's looking at digital inclusion. Love to hear what you've been up to. Thank you.
Thank you, Alison and all. I'm going to attempt to share my screen, so bear with me here. Is it all visible to you now? Brilliant. So good afternoon, everyone. My name is George Anibaba, that's like Alibaba, but with an N. I work for Kent, Surrey, Sussex Academic Health Science Network, and this is going to be a bit of a double act between myself and Will. So Will, I'll let you introduce yourself as well, and I'll launch into the rest of the slides.
Thanks. Hi, I'm Will. I'll let George give a roundup of what's happened so far, and then I'm going to talk about what we're looking to do over the next 12 months.
Thank you, Will. So not meaning to recapitulate, but I guess I will recapitulate. But for those of you who attended the event last year in October, the DSP SAP event, which seems like such a distant memory now, we kind of set the scene around what our MO is and why we're doing this and why it's important to have this working group, and more importantly to tackle this issue. So as we know, digital inclusion is not just about having the right skills and motivation and trust to confidently go online, but it's also about having basic access, which Alison alluded to. So COVID-19, the pandemic has changed everything about the way we live, work, trade, you know, and consume. Universities and schools have had to start teaching online, and we heard a bit about some of that drive to highlight the importance of digital skills in education from Madge. And GPs are doing more online consultations. Musicians even have been performing remotely. High street businesses have become digital to stay online. And getting online and having basic digital skills are now important in getting a job, you know, as they're as important as English and maths. And given the new reality where many of us have been asked to work from home, if you can't get online, you won't be able to survive, basically, is what it feels like these days. Yet according to research by the Good Things Foundation, you know, 9 million people who struggle to use the internet independently have been locked out of this digital economy and are being left behind. So we're having the haves and the have-nots. So what does the evidence suggest? You can see in the middle there was a recent article on the BBC about digital skills shortages and what some of the challenges are. And if we're looking into the horizon, that challenge is going to be even bigger. And we run the risk of not having a workforce or people in our population who are as well equipped as they need to be to live, essentially, and apply these skills to work. So the Learning and Work Institute, according to evidence, suggests that the number of young people taking IT subjects, and Aj, please correct me if this is wrong and you've got more up-to-date data, the number of people taking IT subjects at GCSE has dropped 40% since 2015. Meanwhile, I think Accenture says demand for AI, cloud and robotics skills is soaring. So also during a lockdown, 52% of students said their learning was impacted by slow or unreliable internet connection, with 8% severely affected. And this was a poll of 1,400 students roughly run for the OFS by natives. So we've all seen the stats, and you may recall the University of Cambridge study, which said that the likelihood of having access to the internet from home increases along with income, such that only 51% of households earning between 6,000 to 10,000 had home internet access, compared with 99% of households with an income of over 40,000. So basically, I can almost hear a quote from my dad, and I won't do the accent. You can't give what you don't have, and it's probably not his quote. Others have said it, but I'll say it's from my dad. I'll claim it for him. So while skills gaps are an issue, lack of access is an even more critical issue. And when we talk about deprivation, digital exclusion has become one of those indicators that has sadly become a more common topic of discussion as a result of the pandemic, but also more prevalent as well. So this is a complex issue, a complex societal issue, as you can see. It affects employment, education, communication, access to essential services such as health, and many others. And though there isn't a silver bullet, one of them, which again Aj alluded to, and others as well, is partnership and collaboration, and listening and understanding what some of those issues are. So what does that look like in the Southeast? So you've seen these stats before, so apologies once again if this is no news to you, but 19% of the Southeast population do not possess the skills for life, estimated at 7% will still lack them in a few years' time. Around 14% claimants are digitally disengaged. And there's more data to tell us what that looks like and what that means. And I can go on and on about what the data is telling us. So in terms of a case for change, I mean, it's quite compelling, isn't it? The data is stark, and we've got anecdotal evidence as well from interactions that we have. You'll also recall that in 2015, the UK signed up along with other UN countries to help achieve the small goal, Sustainable Development Goals, which include ending poverty, protecting the planet, improving lives and prospects of everyone everywhere. And in a global context, the UK still lags behind many other G20 countries in terms of inequalities, and particularly digital skills for citizens. So as I said, the case for change is quite strong. So in a spirit of COVID activism, or just activism in general, one of the working groups that myself and Will are involved in is around preventing digital exclusion. And there are a number of subgroups that kind of sprang up out of this. One of them was the Access for All, which I co-chaired, and the other was around charities and employment. And our manifesto, our working manifesto, has been to fight injustice and inequality in the Southeast region through ensuring all of our citizens have the access and the skills required to realize the benefits of digital technologies. And we appreciate, as I said, whilst it's not a silver bullet, it's something that is iterative and something that requires collaboration and engagement. So in terms of our vision and getting universal digital access, we also paused and thought, what kind of themes do we want to look at? So we thought, right, if we want to understand the issue a lot more, we need to share stories from our perspectives, our individual collective perspectives, but also stories from that we're hearing from our various sectors and areas of work that will feed into what the interventions that need to be designed need to be. making sure that there is representation from all sectors and demographics as well, and identifying and accessing funding opportunities, which is key. So whilst there is a lot of ambition, a lot of this work, because it involves individuals and households and involves literally giving devices or giving connectivity, requires funding. So that's a crucial part to making this work. So our working group, with Will leading the working group, is comprised of these members here. Many of you have seen the names before from the last presentation. And we launched in August, and our focus was on 3 I's: issues, information, and impact. And you can call this a bit of a mini learning microsystem, where whilst identifying issues and sharing information and then getting the impact, that loop continues. So as I said, it's iterative. And what's key as well is measuring that impact. You know, for those of you who've worked in quality improvement, you'll know one of the fundamental questions is, how will we know we've made a change? How will we know we've made an impact? And whilst that's not easy to grab hold of in terms of how many organizations reached, how many beneficiaries we've got in terms of people getting devices, this is stuff that we are keen to collect. So going very swiftly on, we've made a difference over the past year through partnerships, and that's been integral to that. The partnership with Coursera, offering free courses to people, the partnership with Future Fit AI and Digital Skills Prospectus, which Will can talk about. But I want to focus a bit on the Everyone Connected initiatives and device distribution initiatives. Now, going to my next slide. So thanks to the donation from the Good Things Foundation and Pfizer and others, we had the opportunity of supporting the distribution of devices through a neighbourhood-focused project, which was looking at areas in Kent and Medway, namely Northfleet, Swanscombe, Thanet and Dover, and areas in East Sussex, including namely Hastings and parts of Essex. Now, one of the challenges, so what COVID has done as well is turbocharged the spirit of collaboration and people coming together and people mucking in, really. But also there are gaps, and there have been voluntary sector organizations that just haven't had the capacity to take that distribution on. So through my organization, the Academic Health Science Network, in the spirit of networking, we were able to connect with voluntary sector organizations and health and care systems to identify those who could do that. So Dover Big Local, in partnership with Takeoff, found beneficiaries, potential beneficiaries, and were able to distribute a number of devices in December through to January to people in Dover and Ramsgate. And whilst that number might seem small, there is a case here through the benefit that has been realized that more investment needs to be made, not just in devices, but in connectivity. Parts of Ramsgate and rural areas of East Kent don't have the adequate connectivity for people to connect to the internet and do basic things and access basic services or access their GP appointments. So there is a case for change here to ramp that up. However, that small intervention is having a massive impact. So surveys are being collected to find out a bit more about the experiences of those people. In East Sussex, people with no access to computers and connectivity, through a European Social Fund project, also been loaning out devices through Hastings Library, and again showing the impact and power of libraries to people across Hastings and other parts of East Sussex. And during the third lockdown, those are being distributed, and once again the impact is felt. And through the work that David Baker, one of our internet social entrepreneurs, is doing, he's been working with schools to launch a fundraising campaign through the Digital Divide Fund to help buy devices and improve connections for people, and there are various other opportunities to expand that work. I'm going to go on to Will now. I was going to say a bit more about what's happening locally and examples of activity that's ramping up and how we can harness those and make sure that people benefit from good practice. But it just goes to show that there is so much to do and so many areas of unmet need, but an opportunity through the DSP and this working group to do a lot more. Will, over to you. Thank you for waiting patiently.
Thanks, George. as you can see, that working group have been very busy. Thanks to George. He keeps them well focused and on target. So George is running the Access for All group. There were 2 other working groups under the strand: support to charities supporting vulnerable residents, and improving training, education, careers advice and information for unemployed across the South East. Neither of those groups really started. So there's nothing to report back from those groups, which got us thinking, really. There is so much good stuff going on, and even in our own little group, you almost lose track sometimes of all the fantastic stuff that is going on across the region. So a couple of months ago, I asked the group, so what's the impact? What impact have we had in the South East? Have we managed to solve the digital inclusion problems yet? Of course we haven't, no. What could we be doing? What more could we be doing to help further the agenda and to prepare our region to tackle that digital exclusion? What we thought would be useful was, because again, so much is happening in so many different contexts with so many different cohorts of people, locally, regionally, nationally, what we thought we could do would be to try and make sense of it for people. So particularly for policy makers, they're the ones that ultimately that are going to make the difference. There's lots of different policies, there's loads of different initiatives, there's hundreds of different funding streams at the moment, but it's not very well joined up. We need to know what works and what doesn't. So what we thought would be useful for how bit is to work on a set of recommendations for regional and for local policymakers on how to tackle that digital exclusion and make a difference ultimately to everybody's lives. So building on what we know already, we will convene a regular Preventing Digital Exclusion Special Interest Group or expert group, not only from our region, but obviously there is stuff happening all over the country. And we'd like to learn from that. We'd like to share, people to share their experiences and their successes, but also their failures. We will use this information then to develop the guidelines and recommendation for our own policymakers. Who? Well, everybody, please, and anybody. Our first expert event will take place on Wednesday, the 16th of June at 3 p.m. We're putting out a call for contributions, and we'd like to hear from individuals or organisations that are currently working on eradicating digital divide or digital skills projects. Please come and share your stories. Tell us what you're doing. Tell us what's worked. Tell us what hasn't worked. The call for contributions goes through Jim's inbox, please. So it's hello@southeastlep.com. If you could add DSP to the subject line, that would be fantastic, so Jim can sort through his vast amount of mail. And what we're hoping to do is to gather evidence from that forum to share and publicise through the Southeast Skills site and through the prospectus. So it's, if you like, hoping to bring together all the knowledge of what's happening within our region and also from the other groups working in the DSP and distill it into some sort of impactful policymakers guidelines for well, I was going to say for future, but of course it's the future, for the immediate future, but also for the long-term future. We've set ourselves a target of zero digital exclusion across the region. There is still a long way to go, but we ought to be making plans now in order to get there.
Brilliant. Thank you both so much, Will and George. So many facts and stats, a lot of them I'm still reading from them. We see ourselves, I think, in the Southeast as being quite a wealthy area, but when you hear 11% are digitally excluded, it's not everybody at all. So I think the work you're doing is really important and already making such a great impact. I like your dad's phrase, George. You can't give what you don't have. I think all of us here on the panel and everyone who's interested and already engaged with the DSP has got connections and experience and a little bit of time. And that's what the magic ingredients that is making all of this work already. So I think it looks fantastic. There's already dates for our diary, 16th of June. I've made a note of that one. And to keep in contact, so use that hello@southeastlep.com if anyone wants to get engaged. And I know there were some comments on the chat, or do use Q&A, any of the participants, if you've got any questions for the panelists. But you've already got people, George and Will, who are saying they want to get involved or know more on that as well. So thank you. It looks really hearty and meaty. I mean, it's a very big topic, isn't it, you got there, but you're making some great progress already. I believe now, Olivia, yes, over to you. We're going to hear a bit about whichever number we're on now of our work streams, the regional industry needs and how what's coming in alignment with schools, universities, colleges. Again, another enormous topic. But let's see, Olivia, what stage are you at with all of that, please?
Okay, great. So I'm just going to share my screen. Let's hope this one works. Where's it gone? Okay, can everyone see that okay? Right, so let's start with this. So
sorry to jump in, we can't see that at the moment on our screen.
Ah, okay, right, it's telling me that it's shared, so apologies for that. Let me just shuffle things around a minute.
As long as you're not sharing it with another DSP, we don't mind.
Right, bear with me a second while I just shuffle this around. Let's see if I can get this to share properly.
Too many screens, you're too digitally advanced, Olivia.
How about now?
That's it.
Perfect. Right, so let's go back through this. Fantastic. So let's start with a brief overview of the scope as was set at the last working group meeting of the education industry alignment. So it was looking really at the current, emerging and future industry skills requirements. What qualifications and trainings out there across the LEP, does it meet the needs? Does it, start to prepare, either adults, young people for the kind of careers that are both becoming available and due to become available? And does it really fit the skill sets for the challenges that industry is currently facing? Okay. What it's not there to cover is, and there is overlap with the other working streams. So it's not covering, for instance, kind of low-level digital upskilling, not going to cover, certainly that support for educators piece that, Aj is doing a phenomenal job on. So let's talk about what we did in 2020. Limited impact. And why? Well, yeah, there was a pandemic. Last year was, pretty rubbish for trying to get people engaged. And the reason for that is the industry insight is the critical element of that. We need to be, getting their insights, getting their time to really focus in on what their business is going to look like, what transformation projects they can see coming down the horizon, and particularly at that kind of pointy end of digital, how will that translate back into skills requirements over the next, 2, 3, 5 years, and so on and so forth. So from the conversations I had, and I engaged with a lot of different businesses around this, they weren't unwilling to engage. It was a timing issue and a pressure and demands of doing business during the pandemic. Unfortunately, people's attention's just been elsewhere. And it's been very difficult to kind of tie people down and get some really valuable insights and time. Similarly, education providers I spoke to, equally in a slightly tricky position, particularly with the pressures that came up, not long after this all kicked off in July of kind of reopening for September. And then we moved rapidly into second lockdown. So yeah, it's been fun. There's a few lessons learned out of that though. So, some of the scope was a little bit too broad. And at best, it became a Herculean task. At worst, it became a Sisyphean task. We had a lot of great contributions for, what sectors people wanted this to cover. And it became quite an endless list. So, software, pharma, agri, IT support, data analytics, hospitality, logistics, and so on and so forth. The problem you start to get is, as I started to speak to people to try and pull them in to support this, was that we were looking at, to generate meaningful outputs, some very strongly diverging use cases, skills requirements, and the common themes that could be drawn were only at the very highest superficial level, and of the type that wouldn't necessarily drive meaningful output. And even then, you know, there's different requirements, they need it implemented differently, and it really, you know, when you look at, for instance, a large corporate, you know, they've got coding, they've got analytics, they've got this, that, and the other, and we start to get a lot of competing stuff. So it was going to become a huge piece of work that, you know, probably is, you know, many, many years to complete, and doubly so in a pandemic. So let's talk about 2021 and what's going on here. So the approach for this is to focus in on one initially, and then two key skills areas. And I'll talk about those key skills areas as we go through this. To derive outputs that are broadly agnostic of the sector, so something that's very going to be applicable to, you know, across most businesses in the LEP, and is going to add value. I want to define what the legacy outputs could look like in advance. That's not dogmatic. That's, you know, just simply something to kind of focus that. Whereas before, I think we were looking very much as the outputs to be defined by the contribution. Looking this time to actually get, you know, some definition to those. I think we need a stronger link to the national priorities and what's going on with that. And ultimately, it needs to be a, you know, a solvable, you know, soluble challenge, something that we can get done with some, you know, rapidity and get some concrete impacts going. So, cybersecurity. This is, you know, something that's been kind of, you know, working in the background on to get sorted, and then the DCMS and the integrated review came out rather at a beautiful time to align with this. So that's some convenient timing. DCMS has, you know, identified it as a key skills priority, one in which there's, you know, substantial shortfall. And I'll go through some of the stats on that in a minute that'll hopefully help contextualize the scope, size, and scale of the challenge. In addition to which, I don't know if anyone's seen it, but the integrated review that the government published, you know, it's lots of good stuff about defense, but tucked away in there is a growing recognition that, you know, government can do what they can to secure all the public sector and, you know, critical national infrastructure. But at the end of the day, so much of, you know, our interactions in society, you know, touch on, you know, the private sector, which holds an enormous amount of data. You know, we entrust from at a personal level critical services to them. And off the back of that, there's a growing recognition that that too needs to be protected to the same level. And there's, you know, for anyone who's read the integrated view, there's, you know, lots of noises about, you know, how to transmute some of this, you know, know-how and expertise from the private sector, from the public sector to the private sector. So some key stats that came out of the DCMS and Ipsos Mori report that was published was, you know, 40% of UK businesses which touch upon cyber have a skills gap. Of that, you know, so 30% across total have a kind of much more advanced cybersecurity skills gap. So the skills gap is around the more complex challenges that exist and more complex threats that are out there. 64% of specialist cyber businesses have been basically struggling with recruiting existing and new employees. And interestingly enough, this isn't just on the technical side as well. So approximately, I think it's about 27%, 28% have also been struggling with the soft side skills as well. So this is more than just a pure technical capabilities piece. It's about creating a holistic blend between technical skills and soft side skills. I think this is pretty crucial because if you imagine a scenario of, you know, a business, you have some very, very niche expertise in the cybersecurity, you know, experts within that. They've got to communicate that to the rest of the business. They have to communicate that to, you know, the executives. They've got to, you know, enable people to make business decisions off the back of that. So I think it's recognizing that, you know, solving this challenge is, you know, principally a technical one, you know, very much digital skills, but it's also recognizing that this can also encompass the softer side skills as well to support that capability. So there's some great conclusions in the DCMS report. I can put a link in the chat in a minute or get it sent out afterwards to the report if anyone wants to read it. It's about 88 pages and a very good read, worthwhile going through. So the conclusions from that was that the gaps and shortages, you know, are starting to have an impact. It's, you know, organizations not just at the, you know, large corporate end, all the way through to, you know, mid, small businesses, and also the cybersecurity specialists themselves. The recommendation is for more investment in the technical skills and training. There's a piece around effectively this, you know, what I mentioned before, the holistic skill set. So, you know, technical skills and soft skills and how to implement them in a business context. So this really leans into that kind of vocational training arena that, you know, sits partly with the universities, partly with independent training providers and colleges, and the preparatory piece sits with schools. So, you know, there needs to be something joined up to really make those skill sets work and develop them. The labour market is challenging to navigate. Absolutely. Cyber is one of those interesting things where every day it's going to evolve. There is new threats that evolve, new ways that people figure out how to, you know, implement attacks, how to breach various networks. When you just consider the pace of how technology changes and, you know, the new systems that people, you know, in your own businesses you may have implemented as a result of the pandemic, each new implementation or each update to that has the potential to bring a whole new class of threats with it. And so it really is one of those fields where, you know, the adage of, you know, every day is a school day, you know, isn't too far from the mark. So this isn't a kind of, you know, a one and done type approach. You know, there is going to be a hefty element of, you know, to create impact in this is the resources and the framework, the knowledge transfer and the know-how to keep people at the cutting edge of what they need to know, as opposed to knowledge that is 18 months, you know, out of date and therefore starting to, you know, already potentially show its age in terms of know-how. And there's another piece as well about, you know, how do we create lines of sight into this as a career and realistic lines of sight. You know, there's the piece that, you know, other leads have spoken about around diversity and recruitment and, you know, engaging a broad demographic into this sector. There's also the challenge around, you know, how do we get people a realistic understanding of what it's going to be? So some people assume that it's going to be just, you know, very, very technical and, you know, so technical that they couldn't possibly do it. Or on the flip side of it, you know, they assume it's going to be, you know, say the kind of, you know, a particular aspect of it, say, for instance, pen testing, and, you know, completely miss out on the rest of the cybersecurity requirements that exist. So that kind of, I think, shapes the kind of almost mandate that, you know, and position that DCMS and the Integrated Review has set out, and set some challenges that I think we constructively solve for the Southeast, and put in place something that will ultimately contribute towards that agenda. So how can we support for the DSP? So some very straightforward steps. So identify the regional landscape, identify what current provision we have in place to meet those gaps. And then it's about kind of that trickle down connectivity. So this will link to Aj's piece around, you know, the precursor skills to get, you know, at secondary and FE level, the trickle down of that cutting edge research at university level to the vocational sector. So, you know, where we are implementing, you know, vocational training for people on this, how do we get that latest research? How, you know, how does that get operationalized into, you know, something that can be distilled into learners and keep them at the edge of it, so we don't run the risk of being 3 years out of date and in as fast moving pace as this, ultimately with learners who just have another form of skills gap. And I think it's really making it easy for the businesses to access those skill sets and resources, you know, embodied in the individuals. So just on that, you know, piece around the kind of scope of what's going on. So, you know, I've done a lot of engagement with the managed service providers, so the IT outsourcing companies across the region. And it's something between kind of, you know, 8.5 to 9 out of 10 of them are, you know, through client demand, setting up or have recently implemented. Some of them already had it in place, but the vast majority are now moving into this space in terms of creating a cybersecurity capability within their businesses. That's principally, you know, their clients principally in the small to mid sectors. But it's a recognition that, you know, they're looking to ramp this up and, you know, they need those skill sets available. So it's, you know, something that we can really look at solving. So the route to doing this initially is to get, what I want to start is in May, is a cyber skills conference. And the idea of this is to forge the links between education and industry. And that's industry bodies. So I'm looking at Crest and Tech UK to participate with this, and to really get the different people in the room together and work out, you know, who needs to connect to who. How do we get that knowledge transfer? How do we get those ideas moving, and that know-how, you know, and start making this happen? I think identifying the specific skill shortfalls, you know, DCMS Ipsos Mori report does go into some detail on that, but I think it's looking at, you know, who is able to cover off those skills shortfalls, where does support need to be put in place for, you know, building that capability with, you know, with providers, with schools, with universities, whatever it looks like. Creating contiguous skills pathways. So those skills pathways are from both an industry perspective and also from a kind of residents of the, you know, the CELAP area perspective. So, you know, what does it look like as a journey, you know, for a person reskilling or upskilling or a school leaver to break into this career field? Equally, what's it look like from a business in terms of, you know, how do they keep their staff appraised and updated? How do they access, you know, CPD opportunities? You know, how do they take a person at, you know, age 18 as an apprentice, and then, you know, work them all the way through their career? And then they're also looking at, you know, how do we align this to some of the resilience models that were, you know, proposed in and put forward in the integrated review. So there's, you know, pieces around cybersecurity resilience hubs, which blend public and private sector. So the question is, you know, do we align to the outputs of that, and what does that look like, and how can the frameworks that get put in place through this conference contribute to that? So that's the agenda that I'm looking at for that. And there's some defined outputs that are going to happen. So some of the outputs are going to be shaped by ensuring there's no overlap. There's a body called Southeast Cyber, who's principally focused on the kind of small to mid business, you know, awareness and, you know, what they need to do as businesses to protect themselves gender. But meeting with them was due to be earlier this week, so we could, you know, kind of sort, you know, clarify what those outputs were going to be in terms of the alignment to their work. It's going to be later this week, but I don't envisage the broad outputs changing. It's more going to be a refinement of them. So the principal output is skills roadmap for the Southeast with, you know, providers identified, you know, mechanisms for how they knowledge share between them, to produce that holistic training skills that was, you know, called for in the DCMS paper, and also the, you know, the best practice where, you know, somebody picks something up from either research or from experience or through partnership with an employer, that gets translated into keeping the training provision current and up to date. Creation of a kind of, you know, a resource bank, if you like, or a framework by which we can get that, you know, operationalization of, you know, say research, cybersecurity research from, you know, university level, and in industry as well, down into the, you know, vocational sector and down into the schools as well, to ensure that that's supporting that roadmap and pathways for people and businesses to get hold of the skills that they need. And lastly, the key output is, you know, creation of strong lines of sight for Southeast residents to get into these careers. I know that there's been some work done, you know, by NCSC around kind of engaging a select number of schools. That hasn't made its way over to the Southeast yet. So effectively, you know, some of the activity can be around front running that. And I think that's probably where it's going to, you know, going to pass that over into to AJ's work, you know, but also to look at, you know, that adult reskill sector, or indeed taking people in the IT space who've looked at cyber but aren't quite sure how to break into it. You know, how do we get that skill set? How do we turn it into, you know, what's needed to meet this capability gap that's been identified? So, support needed, please, from anybody who's out there. So, you know, I've already started the ball rolling on engagement. Going to be, you know, talking to Jim about getting socials up and marketing out for this event. Trying to secure speakers for this from partners. So if anybody knows of anyone who they feel would be an asset to, you know, contribute to this, who has some insights that, you know, please do send them my way. Love to hear from the more the merrier. So we're going to start commencement on that over the coming weeks. So probably realistically next week after Easter. I'd ideally like cybersecurity specialists, you know, businesses that with cybersecurity requirements, so more the end users. We need FE, and I, you know, roping in as many people from the FE space as I can, universities, reaching out to them, ITPs and schools, and effectively speakers from all of the above who can share, you know, insights, ideas, and ultimately are prepared to contribute to a kind of a shared pool of knowledge, you know, repository of knowledge transfer and know-how to support, you know, a robust and forward-looking, you know, skills gap, you know, fill effectively. Okay. Also, some volunteers to help coordinate those outputs would be phenomenal. So that pretty much wraps up where I'm at. I mentioned, for those of you kind of noticed earlier, I said about focusing on 1 to 2 key areas. So there's my contact details to get involved. The goal is to, if this model works in terms of putting together shared pools and frameworks for transfer of knowledge and creating pathways, is to take lessons learned from it and replicate in Q3 2021 for another key skills shortage area, which is data analytics. And again, seeing if this can, if the model works, then building that out. If there's tweaks and differences need to be made, then obviously it'll be changed for that Q3 data analytics piece as well. And I think that's me done.
Fantastic. Olivia, I think we're seeing partnership in action. The chat box has gone bonkers with everyone going, yes, yes, yes.
Oh.
This is
okay.
It's making a lot of sense to so many people. I think your idea of just taking one topic and really diving into that is fantastic and makes so much sense. And what with cybersecurity affecting every single business in every single sector. And actually, as I think it was George who said, from the education perspective, we need English, maths and digital skills. That's just the way of the world from now on in. So I think it makes loads of sense. Honestly, you've got so many offers of contact. You need to save the chat right now.
I'm literally just grabbing that right this second.
Yeah, it's wonderful. And I had to quickly Google to see who Sisyphus was because I couldn't remember. He's the one who rolls rock up the hill, isn't he?
Yes, he is. Yeah.
So
Thank you so much for everyone who's offered support.
We can help you with that rock.
Grab all the details.
No, that was fantastic. And obviously so much thought has gone into that. And I think it absolutely makes a lot of sense for me. I think we all get fed up with our 2-digit password security thing. That's just the tip of the iceberg, isn't it? Cybersecurity is an enormous, growing, changing topic. So it feels like the perfect one to really focus on.
Perfect, thank you.
Brilliant. Yes, that chat will be there. So thank you so much for everyone who's offered all kinds of links and support and information and speakers.
Thank you, everyone.
We'll all make sure we save that. It seems that no one likes the Q&A, so that's fine. We'll carry on with the chat section. So thank you again. That's nearly all of the work stream leads, but actually we're going to go back to Jim, who looks like he's moved into another section of the house for sound purposes maybe. But Jim's going to talk to us about the Digital Skills Partnership and the prospectus and how that's moving on and why he loves it so much. I think. Thanks.
Yeah, exactly. Hopefully, is my sound better? Can you hear me?
That seems good so far. Yes, great.
Good. Okay. So I'm not going to dwell on this for long, apart from, and Alison's implied it quite rightly there, that I do have a particular soft spot for this stream of work, because I think from the very outset, this was identified as a gap. So the National Skills Toolkit the government put out quite early on in the pandemic had a suite of resources available from the big players in this kind of digital skills space. And the complaint, quite rightly then, from the regions was that actually the local offer wasn't reflected anywhere there, and colleges, independent providers, universities who are offering fantastic stuff increasingly online, their voice wasn't being heard and their offer wasn't being made to the thousands and thousands of people that went straight to that National Skills Toolkit when it was released. So we thought quite early on, as I say, that a prospectus for the region that aggregated the global, the national resources alongside that of our colleges and providers and universities actually would hit a sweet spot. Now, we've had a bit of personnel change in terms of the person leading that group who changed jobs, and that job just became his world, quite rightly. Dan from Ginger Nut Media has been great in the sense that he's kept things ticking over. But what we've managed to get to this point is iteration 1 of that digital skills prospectus. So you can hopefully see that I'm flicking to courses on the southeastskills.org.uk website. And this should move along quickly. There you go. I spent way too long without a technical brain, basically copying and pasting hyperlinks and descriptions and going to countless websites to pull together the back end of this page that you see now on the DSP or the skills website. I'm not going to labour too much on everything contained there, apart from to say that And I'm just going to have to move my, but there you go. Right, so now what we have is, I think we're into the thousands in terms of courses and qualifications listed there, but it's split by category. So I'm going to try and smoothly link to some of our conversations so far. So we've got cybersecurity split by for business and for students. We've got stuff around support for young people when we're talking about digital inclusion, personal development, so stuff for people looking for work, looking to change sectors, that kind of stuff. And it goes on and on and on. But individuals or organizations that are looking for some kind of help, looking to try and navigate that huge world, that diverse range of opportunities to upskill or to find out new things. We're hoping that eventually when we get this to the slick, easily navigable app that we want it to be one day, actually we think we could address a lot of the issues out there. Not completely, of course, but I think this will be a really good start, even for all of our respective priorities that our leads have talked about today. You know, having this prospectus, a place where people can go initially to jump into what they're after, or at least to find out what's out there, we think could change the game quite significantly. And I think it is important to say in the context of this discussion today that, and people listening in may well tell me differently, but I think where people like Essex County Council, Hertfordshire, Thurrock have got opportunity portals that are a repository for really great information for the residents, for their organisations in there. You know, it does some really good things, including linking to job vacancies that are live. I'm not sure anyone else is doing this, and I think this is what separates us from other DSPs maybe, and from other regions. And I think, you know, increasingly, if we get this to iteration 2, to iteration 3, then we'll be really changing the game for people in our region. And potentially elsewhere. The last thing I wanted to say, and this is where the ask comes in, is I've had a couple of conversations with a college particularly. I've got a conversation coming up this week with a university in our patch about someone coming in and helping to lead that area of work for the DSP alongside Dan. Potentially app developers too, we could really benefit from speaking to. We've even talked about a group of students in a college or a university that are on the right kind of course that could basically be our app development team. It's as simple as that. A live project for them to work on to get to market, as it were. We think that could be a really, really good job for them to do, a really interesting piece of work for a group of students. So if there are university reps on there, college reps, you know, independent provider reps that, or even schools, you know, that might want to be participating in this kind of thing, then we think it would make an interesting, exciting project, and actually you'll be part of really changing the game for the South East and our residents here. So everything all of our leads have spoken about is hugely important. Of course it is. My soft spot is for this, and it would be really good to sort of take this on a level from where we are now, which is a bit clunky, a bit basic, but at least gives people the an idea of what we want to get it to. So that's all I wanted to say from my point of view. I'm going to hand back to Alison and Melissa. I think we were intending the Q&A, but I'm not sure we've had anything posted within the Q&A itself, apart from some fantastic comments, some fantastic officer support from people. But I'll hand back to you, Alison and Melissa, perhaps to close at this point, and invite questions on after the event, if that's the case. Although, while I ramble, sorry, if anyone does have a question for the Q&A, please don't hesitate to chuck it in there, and we'll get our panelists to speak on it. So thanks ever so much, and back to Alison and Melissa.
Brilliant. No, thank you, Jim. And actually, I'm going to leave the nice, easy task of summing it all up. Melissa. I know, it'll be great. So thank you. No, the website's looking brilliant, and we put the contact details in the chat box as well, so we can all go and have a little look at it as well afterwards. And I know that it's gathering so much content all the time, so it's kind of feels like we've needed that all along. So it's brilliant it's up there and live and running. Thank you, Jim. I'll now go mute. Melissa, to you. Thanks.
Thanks, Alison. And yeah, isn't it great when you really see momentum building, you know, and you can really feel from what we've been hearing today that we're on a journey and we're really progressing here. So that, you know, it's just been great to see all of the focus in each of the work streams. It's been really good to see the challenge and the ambition. So I guess, you know, thank you to Alison. Thanks to Jim for all of your work coordinating all of this. We really do appreciate it all. You're really the glue or the gel that's holding a lot of this together. But you know, none of this could be done without the workstream leads that we just heard from today. And thank you to all of the participants online, you know, live now, but also those of you who are listening post-event. So hopefully today's snapshot has helped to give you a flavour of, you know, all of the great work that's going on in each of these work streams, being led by these very enthusiastic and talented work stream leads, to really make an impact, as we said at the beginning, across our whole region. There's such a challenge at the minute, but really I think what you'll have seen from today is that there's a lot of ambition and we're really starting to realise some of these goals. I guess in closing, you know, the challenge for everybody listening and online is to ask yourselves how you can help. You've just seen in the chat and on the beginning slides from Jim, the hashtags and, you know, where you can share and talk to others about this. So, you know, from the simplest level, reach out to your networks and tell people about what's going on. Okay, so that will be really helpful for us. Send in suggestions, you know, if you're thinking about what you've heard later on and you have an idea, please contact the workstream leads and let them know. And then, you know, if you want to get involved yourself, we would really welcome that. So please do reach out to the workstream leads if you want to help. Every single action is going to count, however small it is. We've been talking about over and over again how digital skills are really going to help our region recover and help us build resilience for the future. They're really going to be key. We've heard how, you know, it's been increasingly recognised, the digital skills piece alongside maths and English, and I'd absolutely agree. AJ, you had 3 C's when you were talking to us. Being as we were talking about digital skills, I've got an A, B and a C that I heard coming through strongly. So I think Alison mentioned about amplification and the power of the sum of our, you know, individual parts really being greater than the individual ones alone, and that you can really see that in the power of what's been put together. Benefit as a B, aren't we seeing some great benefits for individuals in all of the work streams? That's really, really clear, and it's benefiting, the work that we're doing is benefiting, you know, right from individuals through small businesses to people in education to large corporates, as we mentioned at the beginning. And finally, I agree with it, one of your C's definitely about collaboration. That's really been the power, hasn't it, in a lot of the work that we're doing. So I guess keep on that great work collaborating. Thank you again to everybody. Everything that you're doing is making a difference. Thank you.